Hello, and welcome to another episode of Full Court Finance here at Zach's. I'm your host, Ben Rains. And this week, we're going to be sort of going a little back in time, but also like back to the future with the XFL number 2, the second go-around. Vince McMahon, the owner and biggest wrestling promoter basically in North America, the owner of the WWE, announced just recently that they're going to have XFL number 2, and it's starting in 2020. And it's sort of, he announced it right before Super Bowl week, which is a good way to do this. You're going to be in the football spotlight now for the next 7 days. He announced it as the NFL ratings are down for the second year in a row. Also, because there's this new streaming media landscape, that could be something that the XFL could sort of bank on going forward. And this time around, he also wants it to be a little less gimmicky. If anybody knows about the original version of the XFL that started in, I think it was 2000, it was pretty over the top. And this time around, they want it to be just more football, less of a WWE style sort of production. But before I get into all of this, I want to welcome on my guest today, one of my colleagues, Ryan McQueeney.
Hello. Happy to be back. Yeah, we've been on the show before for anyone that heard the sports gambling episode. And hopefully you guys have some listeners that listen to my shows as well. So
yeah, this is Ryan of Tech Talk Tuesdays and Friday Finish Line. So you can check both of those out on wherever you listen to Zach's podcast. So, but Ryan is a WWE fan. If I don't want to misquote you,
yeah,
but
unfortunately, yeah.
So he knows all about Vince McMahon and that world, so that's why I wanted to have him on today. And he's also he knows about the first go around, so it's nice to have someone to talk about the original version of the XFL and what they're going to try to do a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. But so the first time around, it was just sort of a big, we want to be completely different than the NFL. It's going to be a big show, more violence, more. We're going to sort of sexualize the cheerleaders more. We're just going to have it be like the WWE of football, right?
Yeah, definitely. Gimmicky would be the word that I would definitely use. The cheerleaders were scantily clad. The games started, instead of a coin toss for who got the kickoff, it was like a ball was punted down the field, and then a member of each team would run it like no holds barred after the ball, and whoever like got possession of it got to decide who got the kickoff.
Yeah, so I rewatched the This Was the XFL 30 for 30 ESPN documentary last night in preparation for this. And so yeah, there was no coin toss. They placed the ball at the 50-yard line, and the guy ran to get possession. And actually the second ever XFL game, one of the team's best players was out for the season on that very first thing.
Yeah,
and I guess like
snapped his collarbone.
Like half of the people that ever got to do the like run to the ball to try to get possession like got hurt, like seriously.
Yeah, it's extremely dangerous. Yeah,
that's the first thing they ever did in the XFL. But so basically, rumors started in late 1999 that Vince McMahon, the owner of the WWE, wanted to start his own football league. They announced it in January of 2000. Basically, just he came out and were like, we're going to have the XFL in 1 year from right now. And at that time, they had no plan whatsoever. No TV partners, no players, no teams, no stadiums, no nothing at all. And then 6 weeks later, NBC and the XFL were like or the WWE were in a full 50-50 partnership on a 2-year deal. NBC was all in on this, and this is right after basically a couple of years, or I think like 4 years before they had lost the NFL at NBC. So one of Vince McMahon's friends, Dick Ebersol, who is a huge television executive, basically started SNL and then has run like 8 of the top 10 most watched ever television programs. They got in on this together, but it didn't really work. I mean, it was, like Ryan said, it was very gimmicky. They basically had the teams practice for 1 month before the season started, but yet on opening night on NBC, it did a huge number. I think they had 50 million total viewers. It was, whoa, what is this? But even though basically in this documentary, all the people involved said by halftime of the first game, the football play itself was so brutal. It was just so bad. It wasn't even like good hits. People weren't catching the ball. It just looked like low rent football where you had practiced for 30 days, and they thought it was over, but did a great number, but then things slowly just declined. I think by week 7 of that season, they had the worst ever primetime rating in television. And this time around, I think they're going to hopefully, or Vince McMahon at least hopes that's not what's going to happen.
Yeah. I think one thing that he definitely centered on or focused on in the press conference announcement was that the media landscape is so much different now that I don't even think we would really use TV ratings as the metric of success in the first kind of couple weeks, if not the first full season, especially considering the fact, and not to jump ahead here too, but considering the fact that it might not even end up being on TV as we know it. 2020 obviously still 2 years from now, the media landscape could look even more different than it does now. But I would not be surprised whatsoever if the main broadcast partner for this ends up being Amazon or Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or any of the other kind of competitors in that
definitely. So just before we get into what's going to happen down the line, I want to just talk about a little bit about the announcement and sort of what happened leading up to it. So I guess in like mid-December, this passed me by. I don't know if the wrestling world knew about this, but it came out that Vince McMahon sold $100 million worth of WWE shares to start this new Alpha Entertainment LLC.
Mm-hmm.
And basically in the bio of this new company, it was to basically try to start a professional sports league, including a football league. So this has been kind of, people knew about it, but now it's official.
Yeah. So, fun fact for people who don't follow wrestling, World Wrestling Entertainment, WWE, is a publicly traded company. And Vince McMahon serving as the chairman of the board and the CEO, when he buys or sells shares, that's like public information. And any one shareholder unloading $100 million of any company is going to draw headlines. But when it's a very enigmatic, boisterous WWE chairman of the board selling $100 million of his company's stock, that grabbed a lot of people's attentions. And then it was to fund this Alpha Entertainment thing, which for a while we kind of only vaguely knew it was going to be something to do with professional sports. And then kind of as that month or so wore on, it was pretty obvious that this announcement was going to be the XFL or some sort of football league. I guess we didn't really know it was going to be called the XFL until last week. So, yeah.
Yeah, so when I was researching this, what was crazy was I was looking at this Pro Football Talk article, and this freelance journalist, Brad Shepard, they quote a tweet of his, and then I looked it up. So on December 15th, he tweeted out, expect Vince McMahon to have an official announcement of the new XFL by as soon as January 25th. And it actually turned out to be the exact date he announced it.
Yeah.
So he must have had some inside information, so shout out to him. But so it's official. They announced it on he announced it on January 25th in this sort of like weird, it was super weird. It was just him in this like really cheesy, fake looking red, white, and blue
very cheesy
studio. It was I don't know. It just looked like a joke on television, but
it was also kind of jokey in content matter too, because he was very much like, we don't know where the teams are going to be at. We don't know what the rules are going to be like. We're going to let the fans decide. If the fans want to do this, we'll do that. Like, it seemed like he had no plan yet.
Yeah. So I actually took like down some notes and some basically some of his exact quotes from the thing. So it was kind of like, we don't really know what's going to happen yet. It's going to be 2 years from now. He was like, so we'll give us more time than the last time when we tried to do it all in a year. Mm-hmm. So 2 years will work. But he basically straight up said, we don't have a plan. We're going to let it just sort of go where it'll go. He said he wants to have players involved, coaches involved, tech experts, specifically he mentioned medical personnel, and then media. But then he specifically said he wants the new NFL or XFL to be fan centric. So he wants the fans to be involved. And here's his quote. Most importantly, we're going to listen to the fans. What would you do to reimagine the game of professional football? Would you get rid of halftime? Would you have fewer commercial breaks? Would the game be faster? Have the rules be more simple? Basically, like, he just wants all the things people are talking about the NFL. Maybe the games being too long, like 3.5 hours, when it's really not much gameplay. He mentioned specifically to reporters later on that he wanted to be around a 2-hour game.
Yeah.
And getting rid of halftime.
Okay, so let's actually stop there for a second, because it already seems to be a train headed for derailment, because he's talking about player safety. There's one of the things that was brought up multiple times, that it needs to be a safer game. But then he wants to get rid of halftime, which is like a rest break in the middle of the game, so that people can like get re-energized. So he wants to cut a 3.5-hour game down to 2 hours and then make it safer for everyone involved. It doesn't seem realistically possible. I also want to mention as well, and this is a good spot for me to use a little bit of my WWE fandom. He's talking about it being fan-centric and caring so much about what the fans want. Anyone who has followed the WWE really since the Attitude Era, which was that era of the XFL coming out, the XFL was very Attitude Era in its style. Since that era of wrestling, Vince McMahon and WWE have not cared once what the fans wanted. So what's been going on the past decade or so in the promotion has been the exact opposite of fan-centric, and has really been kind of honing in on nostalgia. So like really trying to cash in on their past eras, neglecting fan favorite current wrestlers in favor of that nostalgia, and kind of being completely sporadic and unclear on direction, when, you know, if the fans had it one way, I think it would be, the product right now would look a lot different. So I don't know, as a WWE fan, I certainly have no confidence that Vince McMahon and the WWE are ever going to give us the wrestling product that the fans want. It could be whatever. I don't know. I certainly have a vision for what I'd like to see as a fan that I'm constantly disappointed about. And so the idea that he would be able to effectively deliver a football league for me, the fan, with what I want to see doesn't seem realistic. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And I didn't know much about Vince McMahon, but then specifically in this 30 for 30, one of the NBC executives was talking about how going into the first version of the XFL, that they were like, Vince, this cannot be WWE. This needs to be football. This cannot be a production about you. And he said, for sure, it won't be about me at all. And then opening night, right before the game starts, he goes out to the middle of the field and just does his Vince McMahon with the microphone and just, this is the XFL, and just so that's what. And then again in this press conference, he said the WWE is going to have no involvement. That's sort of why he started this separate Alpha Entertainment company. But like you said, he wants it to be about the fans, but maybe it can go that way.
Yeah. So one thing here that I will tip my cap to Vince about is he sold $100 million of his own stock. This is $100 million of his own money. It is him as the sole owner of the league. The league is owning all 8 teams that will be included at launch. There are no other business partners as of now, no other investors. There's no NBC 50-50 partnership like last time. And he basically said in the press conference, like, I want, this time around it's just me, and I want to be able to say I either made it work or I made it was me who made it fail. So cool, awesome. That's, if you're Vince McMahon and you see the upside to this, like that's going to be awesome if it works, because you did it all to yourself. But I don't know, from a wrestling fan's perspective, to me that just says this is even more likely going to crash and burn. But maybe I'm being a bit too cynical. If you take a step back and really look at it, he's the most successful professional wrestling promoter in the history of professional wrestling by an absolute long shot. So he's clearly been successful in many ways for a really long time. So I'm certainly just being a bit cynical about that, but I guess we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right to point out this is basically all on him. The first time around, it was a joint partnership with NBC, and they wanted him to basically rid himself of his WWE personality. He couldn't do that, so maybe he can do it this time around. But I mean, like the first go around, they had a 2-year contract. They had to stop after the first year because it was just was so bad, and NBC couldn't deal with the terrible publicity. It was a bad product. So we hopefully for a lot of football fans, they don't mind more football. I mean,
yeah,
maybe, and that's what he promoted. He looked like specifically. He was like 70 million fans watch football, and then there's 7 months without it of the year. He wants to sort of get that in between, that right after the Super Bowl's over and then before college football.
Good point. I don't know
again.
if we've even mentioned it yet, but it's going to be a springtime league. So that opposite schedule as the NFL, so they're not necessarily competing for the same attention at the same time. I would actually just love to share a quick quote that the company released, Alpha Entertainment released. It's a mission statement, I should say, I guess.
Okay.
It drags on a little bit. I think they could have used an editor for this, but I think the absurdity of it is what really needs to be highlighted here. It says, quote, "This is the future. This is not the past. This is the future. And the future moves fast. This is quicker, simpler. Rules reformed. This is your game safer. This is football reborn. This is gaming and fantasy. This is padded roulette. Make a trade, make a team, make a move, make a bet. This is fans above all. This is maximum action. Less stall, more ball. Fewer infractions. This begins in 2020.
Yeah.
The future is near. More access, more everyone, more everything here. This is our moment, our story to tell. This is history begun. This is the XFL."
Well, that's really funny that you did that because I was just about to do that exact quote, but I didn't find it in the press release. This is their new XFL Twitter account. This was a rap video, basically. It was just like someone was rapping what Ryan just read, sort of in a rapping-ish tone. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of gimmicky. Yeah.
Yeah, no gimmick-free league, a.k.a. Gimmick-free league, and then the first mission statement we see is, "This is maximum action.
This is the future, not the past."
Ball.
This is
I don't know.
Football reborn.
That's where the cynical side of me is going to come back out is, it's the only thing Vince McMahon knows how to do is insane, crazy, gimmicky stuff. It's all the WWE. Professional wrestling is a scripted television show. You have to be over the top with the premise that you build for yourself. Everything that the WWE does is over the top. If you've never watched wrestling, watch this year's WrestleMania, and it'll be April 1st or April 2nd or whatever. It's the most insane, over the top, ridiculous thing you've ever seen. It's an insane 5-6 hour television event. There's nothing else like it in the world except for other professional wrestling promotions in Japan and other places. This mission statement is so Vince McMahon. It's almost difficult to comprehend it, and then we're being told it's gonna be gimmick free. I don't know. I don't see it, but
yeah, I mean, we'll have to wait and see. But so basically, yeah, like Ryan was saying, for people who don't know, he basically brought together all of these sort of disparate wrestling federations and brought it all together and made this massive publicly traded company that's worth billions of dollars. And he did it sort of over a couple decades at least, right? I mean, It didn't happen quickly. It took him time, and yeah, he's good at what he does.
He's a great wrestling promoter.
But that is not the NFL. That's
Mhm.
not football. It's not scripted. Football is just supposed to be a game that people love, which is the exact opposite of, say, Monday Night Raw, which, to his credit, is, I was reading this last night, that it's one of the longest running episodic things on television.
Longest running. They had their 25th anniversary of the same TV show this past Monday, the 22nd or 21st it was. And the 25th anniversary show, as a wrestling fan, I will say it kind of sucked. We'll leave it at that. It was super disappointing. But one thing I think that helps underscore, and this I think will get us to the next phase of this conversation, which is really important, which I touched on earlier, is the streaming and where it'll be broadcast. One thing the WWE is doing very, very well right now is the WWE Network. Which was launched a few years ago in response to this streaming, the birth of kind of the streaming landscape. It was pretty early in on streaming, which I tip of the cap to the WWE and on that. And basically it shifted the entire business model for the company. So instead of being a you got to get people to watch every week live on TV with Raw and SmackDown are the two primary shows. It's still like that, and TV ratings are obviously still important, but every month or two, the storylines that were on TV would culminate into a pay-per-view event, and you would have to convince someone to pay $40-$50 for an event. Now with the WWE Network, you pay $9.99 a month, just competitive pricing like with any other streaming service, and you get access to not only all of those events, but also a library of every past show and pay-per-view event in the history of the company. And on top of that, like new original scripted series using the talent that they have on the WWE rosters. So, when you look at membership numbers, it's actually one of the most subscribed to streaming platforms in North America. It's been incredibly successful. WWE stock is trading at an all-time high right now. So right off the bat there, that launches the streaming conversation into, is the WWE Network going to be the primary platform? Is there going to be an XFL network that kind of just mimics that business model? Am I going to pay $10 a month or maybe just like $30 for the season or whatever, and I get unlimited access to all the XFL content I want? Or is it going to be through a partnership with a Facebook or an Amazon or Twitter or whatever?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point to point out, that he basically got a little bit ahead of the streaming sports idea with the WWE streaming thing. And I don't know. I can't see. I guess I could see easily him tying it back into the WWE network, even though he said it's going to have nothing to do with the WWE. But I think, like anyone, basically, there's so many different places that you can stream television now that anyone could buy the rights to these games. And I think that's why in the next 2 years he could negotiate just an introductory deal, and it wouldn't have to be some crazy deal with NBC on network television that can't fail.
Absolutely,
it's gonna have time to grow into itself. Whereas the first version, it was all or nothing. If we don't do this first season, we are in big trouble. Whereas if Amazon pays $10 million to stream this first season, where I think it's gonna be 10 games, 8 teams, and then there's 2 playoff games and a championship game. It's not going to be some huge $1 billion streaming deal, but Facebook is slowly trying to get into sports. Anybody could buy this.
If I'm going to sit during the day and somehow, for some godforsaken reason, be watching 2 of the Ball children play semi-pro basketball in Croatia or wherever they are, Lithuania. And that's all thanks to one guy, setting up a small deal with Facebook, and somehow I'm watching Lithuanian professional basketball
of 17-year-olds.
Yeah, then in my Facebook browser while I'm surfing through, checking on my friends or whatnot, then clearly I'm watching the XFL on Facebook too. They already got me hook, line, and sinker on that. If it's on Twitter, if it's on YouTube, if it's on Amazon Prime, whatever. Like, I'm definitely going to be engaged in that. So
I mean, I'm basically speculating. I say there is a 99.9% chance this is not on television. I bet Vince McMahon basically is saying this is going to be a streaming thing. That's where it's going. He's also then pointed out that he wants this XFL streaming to look different, to not just look like a television product, which is actually, to his credit, the XFL basically invented the Skycam. They invented miking NFL players or XFL players. They invented like bringing the cameras onto the field, getting close into the action.
They had like a ref cam or something like that.
Like they were like right in the huddles basically in that. So they just gave more access to the XFL. And then the next season, the NFL was doing all of that. And they still do that to this day.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's definitely, even if this thing crashes and burns in one season, there's definitely going to be that one or two things that was awesome that the NFL is going to steal. So we have at least that to look forward to. But yeah, I would definitely expect like player cams of some sort. You know, if it's going to be something that's on a streaming platform, I'm expecting to be able to bounce around to different cameras and get whatever look I want. Maybe some sort of like multiple commentary options. One thing we're seeing with a lot of live sports streaming these days is people are trying out like fan commentary and stuff like that. So that'll definitely be interesting to see. And so 99, you said 99.9% chance this is not on TV and it is streaming. I will put a 99.9% chance there is a streaming option. I would expect Vince to try to ink some sort of TV deal. And if it does come on TV in any capacity, I would expect it to be on the USA Network just because of WWE's existing deal with the USA Network.
There. Okay.
Yeah. A big enough platform. If you have cable, you have the USA Network. So, the existing relationships, it seems like the USA Network would be more than willing to try that out with Vince.
Yeah, and I mean, so he just basically is saying, like, there's going to be a streaming version of it no matter what that's going to look different than a television product because he points specifically to, like, fans don't want to see streaming look just like the TV version because then why is it being streamed? Like, why wouldn't I just watch it on TV then? So, yeah, you're good to point out that there's going to be a streaming version and there could be a television version. We don't know that. So that's great to point out. And it kind of goes to my initial point that he dropped this announcement right before the start of Super Bowl week in Minnesota and right after basically the NFL had another down season. The ratings were down 9.7%, 14.9 million this year. They were at 16.5 million average viewers last season. And they were down 8% last season. So back-to-back years, they're down pretty big. So the NFL is on a little bit of a decline, but that's kind of how linear TV is going in general. So if you look at Nielsen's ratings, the NFL still had 33 of the top 50 most watched shows in 2017. So it's not like all of a sudden no one's watching football. People are just watching less TV.
Yeah.
So the NFL, it might sound like, oh, the NFL is tanking, they're doomed. But it's really just like TV is slowly just being doomed. And that's what he's trying to do with this XFL thing is like people still like football. It's still by far the most popular sport in America. The most recent Gallup poll, which they do every year, football was still 37% of America's favorite sport. And the next closest is basketball at 11. So there is a place for maybe this XFL, especially if it's just more of a streamlined game of football that are college players who couldn't make it to the NFL or guys who got cut from the NFL before the season starts. Not just like willy-nilly guys who were bagging groceries. We're going to practice for 30 days and try to have a league that's competitive. This is going to be more of a football league. They're going to have these guys on like a yearly salary so they don't have to have other jobs. They're going to be dedicated to having football be their job. So the game isn't going to be as gimmicky. It's not going to be about just like the first time around it was like, we're going to give you hits that the NFL can no longer give you. It's just going to basically be springtime football is what it seems like the plan might be. And I think that's what it should be. Cause I think NFL fans, if as soon as the Super Bowl is over, like, hey, I can just sort of watch like NFL B, like the development league of the NFL, which I know Vince McMahon doesn't want this to be. Like he specifically said, like, I don't want people to come to the XFL to try to get on an NFL roster, but that's likely going to be what happens. But there's nothing they can do about that. It was funny, though, that they asked him specifically about, like, Johnny Manziel or Colin Kaepernick or Tim Tebow playing, and he was like, we could have Tim Tebow play, but he said specifically we're not going to have anybody that has any criminal past at all. So Johnny Manziel had a DUI. He's like, so basically Johnny Manziel won't play in this league. And Johnny Manziel's already like tweeting out the day of like XFL 2020, I'm ready.
So he did specifically say that in the press conference, like people with criminal records aren't going to be able to play in this league.
Ridiculous.
There is 0% chance that holds up to the first day. Like, first of all, that eliminates literally
half the NFL.
Yeah, well, not even just so much of the NFL, but think about the types of players that are trying to get on teams are going to be guys who have like run into legal trouble or whatever and got cut from their NFL team.
It's not a big, like, it's not like he's saying
no
we won't have murderers. It's just, you can have like little infractions. It happens all the time.
Like, so you want to be family centric. Obviously a DUI is not a good thing, clearly. But there's Johnny Manziel's past is well documented with problems. But you're telling me you're not going to sign Johnny Manziel to this league? You're kidding me. Because he's just going to be a superstar. That is going to be the type of stuff that gets people to tune in. Is it going to be Tim Tebow, Johnny Manziel day one? You're going to have millions of people watching.
If it's Tim Tebow versus Johnny Manziel week one, that will be bigger than like
it's a sensation.
Sunday Night Football. Like that would be huge, and that's all he could want. Like if like he says no, Johnny Manziel. If Johnny Manziel wants to play and he says no, then you're just hurting your own business. Which at the end of the day, he's definitely not going to try to hurt his own business because that makes basically no sense at all. And like as we wrap this up a little bit, there's also a little bit of a political undertone going on with this. Actually, if you watch the video, it kind of looked like a political campaign. It was red, white, and blue. It's hashtag XFL 2020, which is coincidentally when the next election cycle is. And people are talking about how he has a little bit of a relationship with President Donald Trump. His wife is actually in his cabinet. So there's a little bit of stuff there. He's specifically talking about there won't be any kneeling for the national anthem in the new XFL, and that is going along with a lot of what some people who watch the NFL are upset about. So there's a lot going on, and there is certainly a lot of buzz around this, and he is the king of buzz. He's the king of promotion, like Ryan said. That is his job. That's how he's made billions of dollars, is promoting something heavily. But he doesn't want it to be the first version of the XFL, which is basically just a huge smoke and mirrors promotion that turned out to be trash, low rent, pretty much garbage football that got canceled on NBC after a year and had, after week one, basically the worst ratings ever in primetime on Saturday nights. So I want to thank Ryan for stopping by and talking a little XFL, WWE, Vince McMahon, football talk with me today. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I will say this, for as much as I criticize Vince McMahon, I'm still watching his product still at the WWE, and there is a 150% chance I'm tuned into the first XFL game. So I'm already hooked.
Yeah, I mean, I think in 2 years from now, I think there'll be some streaming version of it on a platform you've heard of. There will be some players that you've heard of from college or former NFL players, and I think at least if they don't do this gimmicky stuff, it has a chance to maybe work in this new age of entertainment where it doesn't have to get a good rating right away. They can just sort of let it flow.
Yeah.
So that does it for another episode of Full Court Finance here at Zach's. Until next time, I'm your host, Ben Rains. And remember, if you have any questions, please feel free to shoot us an email over at podcast@zachs.com.